for all.
Thank you. Roll call. Councilor Cody.
Here.
Councilor Graff.
Here.
Councilor Bell.
Here.
Councilor Lutz.
Here.
Councilor Mason. Councilor Marlowe.
Here.
Councilor Bowyers. Wow.
School general obligation bond.
I will open that public hearing for the public to comment on the general school obligation law. Sounds like everything's okay with the law. Okay. Well, later, we'll close the public hearing.
Ready for the next item? Consent agenda. Order 2010-23 to approve the minutes of January 5, 2010, town manager's contract renewal, and a forfeiture approval.
Entertain a motion. Motion from Councilor Michelle. Second from Councilor Follow. All those in favor? Opposed? Opposed.
Okay, order passed 5-1. Resolutions and ordinances. Order 2010-24, school general obligation bond order.
Council, before we go into this exact item, I'd like to get a report and an opinion from the advisory board. So, Mr. Fellows.
Work now.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to read the following. As you're aware, I'm Tom Phillips, and I'm newly representing the advisory board as its chair. Tonight, I'd like to inform you of a recent decision of the Budget Advisory Board regarding the proposed school general obligation bond. On Tuesday, January 19th, the board formally met in the town office and listened to the superintendent of schools, Rick Green, propose the bond in the amount of $350,000. He spent considerable time explaining the purpose and financial effect of the bond for the school. I'll not repeat that explanation here, as the matter has been sufficiently aired at a public information session, a council meeting, and tonight's public hearing. After several questions, the board formally considered the matter, and the members present subsequently voted unanimously 5-0 to support the issuance of the bond and favorable endorsement of any upcoming election ballot. Since that time, the public hearing has been held tonight, although nobody was commenting. The school district will incur significant curtailment of state allotments of funds this next year, as you know. The curtailment, which varies depending upon which budget figures you use and who's quoting what, is somewhere between $600,000, $800,000, or $1.4 million on the outside. It is significant. But while I cannot speak further for the entire board, I can speak for the members that are present. That's me. We still solidly support the positive endorsement of the bond as it goes forward for the council and for voter consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Fellows. So, council, before us, we have the general obligation bond order for $350,000 to the public. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we accept the removal of the obligation bond.
Any motion from Councilor Rochelle, and a second from Councilor Graff. Any further discussion from the council? Any comments from the public? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
Next item.
Order 2010-25, council recommendation for ballot.
And this is for the ballot recommendation for April 6, 2010.
For the rest,
Yes or no vote of the law for the law.
council recommendation.
Yep. So we have an advisory recommendation again. We have a school committee recommendation again. And then council recommendation. those in favor?
Order passed.
Next item, please.
Order 2010-26 to warrant for the special town meeting and one referendum action.
This is the actual warrant that will be posted.
Yes.
And people with absentee ballots will be available.
Right, and this also sets the polling locations and your polling hours.
Polling locations are in the MTM Center and the town office.
This recommendation here is for the current existing polling locations. One is the Lisbon Superintendent's office, and the other is the MTM building.
Is council okay with those locations?
Would it be, are you worried about the flow? I mean, would it be practical to do the location of the town office like we have in the past? So that
I think the choice would be definitely just.
I believe the MGM is fine. Would it be practical to do the town office versus the location? And it's why more so that you see her.
I
I don't think the flow of people would be drastic enough to need the other location, but.
The other hand, I think there's some consideration should be given to being consistent with voters, so they know where they're going, instead of doing it back and forth at times, sometimes that's confusing. I'm not sure,
We would know that, so.
I would leave it wherever it is at the superintendent's office. We are recommending 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. to allow voters to be able to come out and do their work and just be able to get home as well. And absentee ballots will be available 30 days prior to this election.
Perfect.
And recommend motion to move forward with going for special town meeting on the recommendation. Be held on dates and times that what you said.
I have a motion from Council Varicella, a second. And a second from Council Paulo. Any further discussion from council? Comments from the public? All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
And that means absentee ballots are available March 6th, correctly?
Yes, and those who want to just come in and fill out an application or call can do so, and we'll put them on the list so that way we know about anyway.
Okay, next item.
Order 2010-27, approve the municipal budget calendar.
You should have in your packets a copy, a draft of the upcoming budget calendar. I have scheduled the presentation on March 16th at the council meeting, and then from March 18th, we should start hearing from our department heads, giving short presentations on their budget needs. Should be straightforward. At each of these meetings, the advisory board will be attending, so we only hear it once. Do the same thing the council gets here. Of course, knowing how the whole process will go in terms of timing, we can adjust as to any concerns.
Comments from the council on the budget? And for scheduling the public hearing for April anybody from the school department have a recommendation on when they would like to see the public hearing?
Can you repeat those dates you were talking about? Because we didn't hear them. Please. I did.
So right now, the way the budget is set up is there will be a presentation on the 16th. Council will meet between March 16th and roughly April 27th. Go through reviews of the town budget and the school budget with the advisory board. Currently, it's scheduled for April 27th to have a public hearing for both the town and school budget. And then council would continue to meet and go through any recommendations at that point in time and come to a final vote in late May so that we can take the school budget to a referendum vote in around June 8th. So that's the current schedule set up. So, yes, sir.
Would it be possible? Would it be possible for us to leave that public hearing as is, since it's, it was kind of aligned that way, and possibly, somewhere in the middle, actually have another public hearing at the town office during our meetings, so we're having input. That way, maybe the general office would have some input, actually, just the public hearings at the school. And that maybe would allow people, instead of actually having open discussion during our workshops, to be able to come to and actually express any concerns before we try to finalize the budget.
Whatever council would like.
Or I think it's a recommendation to add a public hearing to one of the dates we already have here.
To be named at a later time.
To be made, yeah, exactly.
So basically, you're saying leave the schedule kind of as it is, and sometime towards the end of our deliberation process, after the first public hearing, we would open up one of our meetings to additional public comment.
Correct.
Which council's thoughts on that? Okay. Sound okay to everybody?
So you're talking between March 16th and April 27th, somewhere in there.
No, between April 27th and May 25th. We would open up another one of our meetings for additional public comment.
One after.
Right, after the first public hearing. So, do something during one of those regular workshops. Okay, so if that's okay with council, we'll entertain a motion to approve the budget schedule.
I make a motion to approve the budget calendar as
I have a motion from Councilor Arisello, a second from Councilor Cody. Any further discussion? Any additional comments from the public? All those in favor?
Next item, order 2010-28, William Van Tyne, land appraisal.
I don't believe Mr. Time is here yet.
Okay. So the next item is final.
Okay, under other business, town manager's report.
One of the items that was not on my report is you have in front of you a draft for a letter of agreement from Durgo Engineering. Mr. Bauer is here tonight. If anybody has any questions on that, they have already voted and approved the contract. We actually met with them today to go through it with the MDOT and then Brian Layton, our city engineer. Since it is public, the town money that's paying for this, it's already been approved by the voters. It's a recommendation that the council take a look at it, and if they have any comments or questions, they can speak to Mr. Brown.
And so I understood you to say, Steve, that Brian, our town engineer, has been involved in these discussions.
Yes.
And working forward to this. And this is really for the Upland Road piece. I mean, not Upland, right? do that every day. Upland Road, I mean, the Route 9 road, I'll get that. Route 9 section, to Upland.
Yes.
Okay. And so you guys have all been through that. And our portion of that's probably about $700,000.
5 to 7.
Good. Comments from the council on this? So I'm assuming council agrees it's okay with what's been done so far, and we're ready to keep moving forward, right?
Carlos, I guess Brian's work hand. I mean, Brian has worked hand in hand with the water department, I would assume, to make sure, because Derek was the one that did the initial engineering across the project, so this is just a continuance of that, to make sure that it's all set.
We met today, we went smoothly, and looks good.
Okay. So council's all set with that, we'll, keep going forward. All right, thank you.
Dee Dyer will be coming to the town office February 11th to the 13th, which is work through Saturday. Have Sunday available to get the town office all insulated. Everything's in place. We met with them. And also the architect went through the contract and met with Ryan and I to take a look at all the things that he had recommended. And he's pretty very comfortable with it. As you all know, we hired Jessica Malloy. She'll be our finance director. She's tentatively coming on February 11th. She's rearranging childcare, so she's not quite sure. I also attended a rail service meeting at Avcog, and Dale and I got copied on that today about the rail services and the positive stuff going on, so hopefully we'll continue to see that moving forward to get to rail service from Brunswick all the way through Lewiston. Also, I had been approached by U.S. Army recruiter, Captain Josh Jakes. They have a program going on throughout the country, and it's a community covenant ceremony. We have tentatively set March 23rd will be the first town in the state to do something like this. It's just a really nice program that they really do in all the work, that we support our troops in all that's going on and do whatever we can for their families. They're all pretty excited about Lisbon doing it. Rosie Bradley and I will be organizing all the participants, which will be the Legion. We've talked to the school department and having representatives there and all our local and federal people there as well.
The next item is audience participation. Those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward. Please use the microphone. Thank you.
Do we have any audience participation? Okay.
Could I, no, actually, I was just gonna ask, and I'm not sure if you want to do this, as far as audience participation, but it would be nice if there are some people here tonight that probably were interested on the weather bomb, which has to be done, and I know Mr. Green had a little bit of information possibly to share. Since we're ahead of schedule here a little bit, I'm just wondering if you'd be willing to just give a quick overview of what the bond and what the improvements and the facility you're going to get kind of look for. I know there's a few people in the audience who would appreciate the information, and if we could, I'm not sure as a participant in the audience to do that or not, but it would be good. But just a quick overview of the improvements that we have on the bonds.
Some of you had attended the public hearing we held regarding the bond issue. Basically what it is we are using stimulus money along with asking to use payments from the modulars that we're recommending to remove, which is roughly about $25,000, as well as we have a bond expiring as of this year. So we're asking to use that payment that is currently in our budget to do work on the high school, to move forward for NEAS concerns, to correct some of those. Facilities Committee is recommending that we replace the siding in the windows of what used to be the senior wing, I don't know who's there now. The north wing for energy efficiency, as well as in some of the rotting windows and correcting those. Also to move primarily moving the entrance so that it's handicap accessible, so we can securely lock down our building when we need to. Currently, you have a handicap accessible entrance at the end of the corridor that has to be unlocked and manned for night games or things like that, meetings. So this will move the front entrance, make it handicap accessible. We're going to put key doors so that it's automatic lockdown, so that we don't have to worry about our staff having to physically go lock those doors. Also, we are recommending that we replace and insulate the gym roof. The concern of peeling paint is what we've been told, lack of insulation from when the roof was installed many years ago. So as that, we're estimating that's going to be about $613,000 to do all that work. It will take away a lot of the NEAS concerns, because also we plan on internally moving the art room underneath the gym, which was a concern for learning. So we are working hard, the facilities committee is working hard to remove ourselves off from probation. We do not believe that we will immediately be removed, but with all this major work being done, I think the NEAS committee will be elated at the progress that we will be making. We also have a second avenue of applying for the state funding for a capital improvement project, which we're all keeping our fingers crossed that we are able to become part of that short list. So that application will be due in June, and our architects and engineers are just about complete. I think they told us they were, 92% or so complete, so that will be sent off. Any questions?
Next item.
Is under appointments, order 2010-29, Board of Assessment Review.
You have 4 applications in front of you. We still are looking for a 5th full-time member and 2 alternates, but at least with the 4, we'll have a quorum, and we can start down that process if we do have people in place and at least keep plugging to get the 5th and 2 alternates.
So we have Robert Begin, I believe Michael Houston, Timothy Fitzgerald, and Clyde Vander Kevin. And that. Hopefully all have their application information. Any questions, concerns? Any motion?
Make a motion to accept the afterwards as received.
Motion from Councilor Arcel, do I have a second? Second from Councilor Brody. Any further discussion? Comments from the public? I think a couple of those people are here today. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
Welcome aboard. Appreciate your support. Hopefully we don't really ever have to utilize our services too much, but. Okay, next item.
Council communications.
Council communications, any communications, council?
I just want to thank everybody for coming to the public hearing tonight with the school bond. And hopefully this is a first step moving forward to a lot of improvements that really need in school. And hopefully everybody will, if you didn't come to the public hearing tonight, make sure you will vote, because we do need a yes vote on the bond to make it happen. So if there's more repairs done in school, make sure that you go to the yes vote. Fortunately, everybody for a yes vote, but I appreciate it.
No other comments from council? Okay. Well, with that, I would like to recommend about a 20-25-minute recess as we try to get Mr. Tooman here, spend time, since we're way ahead of schedule. So, go into a slight recess here, and hopefully Mr. Watson will get through that and see that. So, chiefly, I guess, for lack of better words, or reasonably. And so council, I know, had some questions and concerns, so William is here to kind of give an overview, explanation of his approach and stuff, and answer questions over that. So, with that, no? You could actually, yeah, I'll just do it. Just feel more comfortable.
I'll give you a little bit of an overview, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that anybody has. I was contacted by Pat and asked to provide a proposal to the town on setting up a landscape to be utilized with your, I believe, mostly in-house revaluation effort, which I want you all to know is a lot of work. Doing a revaluation is a great deal of effort in many different ways. And the software that you are utilizing in your office is a software product that I have a substantial amount of experience with. It's called the Trio. And just about every revaluation that I've done since 1990, I've completed using the Trio software. So I have a lot of experience with the particular software that you have, and I have a substantial amount of experience setting up land schedules, coordinating those land schedules with building appraisal schedules to reflect local values in different communities that I've worked in. So the proposal that I have given to you is not, I want everybody to be clear, it's not for me to do all the data entry. It's not for me to sit at your computer or one of my staff members to sit at your computer and enter that this property has 2 acres of this type of land, 3 acres of this type of land, site improvements, that it's in this neighborhood or that neighborhood or that zone, but to set up the framework that is all done in. It would be your responsibility to do the data entry. It would be my responsibility to provide the assistance for the framework for that data entry to be done and to test the land schedule or schedules against lots of sales data that hopefully is available in various sections of town. And I'll go through in a little bit of detail. I don't want to bore you to tears, but I'll go through in a little bit of detail of what that all involves. The Trio software works within a particular framework, and it pulls that framework together to value the land. Part of the framework are land schedules. schedules that say a home site up to the first acre or half an acre, whatever is appropriate in various zones or areas of town will be valued at this unit value. Additional land might be valued at a different unit value. And you can have a large number of land schedules. The software has a lot of power in terms of allowing you, if you need them, to have a large number of land schedules. And the land valuation system works also with a matrix of zones or uses. Maybe you've got a residential zone in town that has certain lot size, and certain things can be done, certain things can't be done. That zone would be part of a matrix, and based on entering a neighborhood, everybody knows what a neighborhood is, but an area with somewhat similar characteristics of the property. Based on neighborhood delineation and the zone, the software directs itself to the land schedule that's appropriate based on what you set up to value the land in that neighborhood and zone. So it's somewhat of an automated system. A person who might be doing the data entry can do the data entry without understanding everything about the software. You designate that all the properties on map 12 between lot 1 and lot 50 are in a certain neighborhood and a certain zone, and that data can be entered. That's not going to be my job. That's going to be your town staff job, but to set up the matrix of how that will be entered so that it comes up with statistically valid, verifiable values will be my job under the proposal that I've made to you. And it's my, that's what I interpreted Pat's request for a proposal to be, and that's what I've provided to the town, is to look at all the land sales and also to look at a lot of the land and building sales. It's not like you can value land on one hand and buildings on another hand. Most of the sales that you have are going to be combinations of land and buildings selling as a package. So Pat and I will have to work together and coordinate things so that both hands know what they're doing. And it works as a package for a valuation that's reasonable with sales. The methodology that you use with this software, with any software, when you're doing a mass appraisal system, when you're doing a tax appraisal system, is sales ratio analysis, where you look at, you develop your schedules. You look at how the sales in various areas of town, various types of property, what they're coming in at. And you start with your best guess, your best estimate of what's going to work for a land schedule and a building schedule in that area, and you test it against the sales with the sales ratios. That lines up the sales that have occurred in a particular area of town or a particular type of property, what the proposed assessed values are compared to the sales prices. And you try and you fine-tune it, test it again, fine-tune it, test it again, until you get the best fit that you can obtain, where you really are looking at two things. You're looking at your ratio. I don't know what your goal actually is. If you want to be at 90% of value, 95% of value, 85% of value, that's achieve the goal that you want to achieve. But you do that by testing your proposed assessed values against sales, and you look at the overall ratio. You want to be at 90% of value or 95% of value. You want to make sure that you're at that level of value consistently. If you have 3 sales, this is very simplistic, but if you have 3 sales, and one is at 50% of value, assessed at 50% of value, one is at 100% of value, and one is at 150% of value, you've got a perfect ratio. You've got 3 sales, the average 100% of value, but they're all over the place. And the way you measure whether they're all over the place or not is what's called a coefficient of dispersion. Sometimes it's called a quality rating. With that particular 3-sale combination that I gave you, I think the quality rating would be 35 or so. It would be high. The lower the coefficient, the tighter the fit. So if you had another 3 sales and one was at 90%, one was at 100%, one was at 110%, have the same ratio, 100%, but it's a much tighter fit. And the whole idea of the sales ratio study is to bring things in at a reasonable ratio of assessed value to sales price with that tight fit. And that's the kind of work that I have proposed to do with your town officials. It's one of these things where it requires us to work together. It requires us to think together and coordinate things together. It wouldn't just be me. It would be me trying to give my work experience and ability to pull these kinds of things together over having done it for a long time, to try to meld that with the efforts of your staff. That's basically what my proposal is, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. It explains a lot. One of the questions I had is, when we first listened, of course, none of us, speaking for myself, okay, I'm not real experienced with the idea of evaluation and reevaluation. But what I'm hearing is, regardless if you're doing Lisbon, if you're doing Portland, if you're doing Bangor, or wherever you're doing, if you're using real software, the scheduling has to be done regardless, because the system, the software only works if you actually put in the information for it to work by. So this scheduling isn't something unique, it's something that has to be done before the evaluation. Using the Trio type software is done. I mean, it's a necessary step in the starting process of evaluation. I mean, is that somewhat correct? Or?
I think that's correct. The Trio software is a very good, in my opinion. I work with it a lot. I probably am used to it so much that I have a predisposition to be favorably inclined to it. But it's like a spreadsheet. Okay, if you go out and you buy a spreadsheet, you can do anything, but you still have to know how to input the information in the spreadsheet. If you just buy the software, it doesn't do anything for you. You gotta know how to use it. You have to know how to set up the formulas, how to set up the tables, how to make the calculations. And you gotta know something about the data that you're putting in there. If you're putting rotten data in there, you can do the best analysis in the world, but it's of limited utility.
I guess initially when we looked at it, or when I heard it, it seemed like it was an alternative means of giving an evaluation on land. But from more here, it's not an alternative, it's actually the more basic way. I mean, can you actually say that since all the revals that you've helped with since 1990, I think what you mentioned, is this scheduling process you use is pretty much the same process that's pretty much done in pretty much all your evaluations? Is this one of many different ways of setting up a schedule, or is this actually, I mean, I guess that's
No, there's some preferences that certain professional people in the field have. Not everybody wants the same type of landscape. Someone might feel that this approach is a little better than this alternative approach. Just for an example, on rural land, my preference is generally to value rural land as if it was vacant, and then to add a site improvement value for lots that have on-site septic and well. That's just my preference. It's not the only way to do it. Some other people might say, we'll value a rural lot at a unit value that includes those site improvements, and we'll make a vacancy allowance for the lots that aren't improved, to represent that a vacant lot is worth a little less, maybe substantially less than a developed lot with private septic and water. Neither one is right or wrong. It's a preference that some assessors feel more comfortable with one approach. It's what they're used to. Other assessors feel another approach is better, but TRIO accommodates a wide, a lot of flexibility, and you can formulate the methodology to fit the situation of the town, both in terms of how much development is going on. Is it a sleepy rural area where there's not a lot of development going on? Or is it a fast-growing area where certain things like the amount of frontage that a parcel has is very, very much linked to its value? I don't know what the situation here is, but you tailor it to fit the needs of the community and the values of the community.
And I guess the concern that was raised from last time that I've talked to people about, and myself as far as just being there, is in the past we've looked at reevaluation by subletting it, in the cost range, the 300 to 320,000 range or more or less. When we were presented the idea of doing it in-house, in a sense, with help from a third party, much like yourself, to actually do the evaluation with a number under 100, say 80s, 90s, about a third of the cost. I guess it was a concern that a lot of people had is, how we shorten ourselves, is the evaluation that we're going to do going to be fair and equal and actually achieve the right goal. An evaluation you only do so often, so you don't want to short yourself. You don't want to, if the idea of spending the 300 is going to get a proper evaluation, spending less than the less evaluation is more, that's kind of a concern. But from what I'm hearing, the idea of doing in-house is not easy, right? I realize this, for that $80,000 to $90,000 figure that we're figuring that's going to cost us in-house, there's a lot of internal work needs to be done. And from what you're giving us for a quote, I mean, you're actually just starting to help set the foundation for our internal people to be able to put the numbers in to try to set an evaluation. In your own opinion, do you think the process, the way we're going about it, not only is just more reasonable, but actually at the end of the day is going to be a fair evaluation or reevaluation, as much so as if we went out? I mean, I don't believe always the idea of outsourcing everything is always the best way either. I think sometimes handling stuff internally, we have a little more control over it. So I'm not worried about looking internally. Just I think the people, or the people that listened to the last meeting had concern that at the end of the day, the process we're doing, do you think it's going to be a fair evaluation? Or, I mean, is this the right step for us to go? And I know your opinion is, you've been doing it for a long time, and I respect everything you said tonight, so I really think you have the grips on it. I think if what you're doing is the baseline that we have to start with, whether we hire somebody or not, I think it's the step that we need to move forward. But I guess I don't want to put you on the spot at all, but the idea of towns doing the alternative that we're doing, do you feel that usually ends up being a fair evaluation?
Boy, is that ever a
Tough question, huh?
That really is a very, very hard question. know what you budgeted for certain phases of the job. And I don't know whether you are doing most of the data entry from existing records that would just be reviewed a little bit in the field rather than re-inspected. And that's all, it's all critical. One town that I've worked for quite a while now is the town of Skowhegan, and I've worked there since 1990. And the only way I can answer your question is to try to give you an example.
That's fine.
At the same time that I started there, the town undertook a revaluation. I wasn't hired to do the revaluation, I was hired to do the regular tax assessment work. And the revaluation was completed in 1991. And I've maintained that system since 1991. And I've had to do 3 or 4 updates in that amount of time. For quite a while, probably up until 1998, 1999, things were pretty sleek, and the market wasn't growing very much from year to year. And in fact, some of the issues we had were reducing some of the values in a few areas. When we had the revaluation, for example, we didn't have many sales in our downtown. Then a few sales occurred, and they universally indicated that we were a little high. We didn't have much to work with. When the sales came in and they indicated we were a little high, we made some downward adjustments. And then the values in Skowhegan, as they have in many, many areas, really started to take off. And in order to certify a reasonable ratio of value, we had to do some major updating of our values. In Skowhegan, that's particularly important. In Skowhegan, we have a lot of industrial property. There's no way in the world that you can justify being at 100% of value on a paper mill, for example, or a hydroelectric plant, if you're not at 100% of value on everything else. So we have to somewhat act defensively to keep our values where we can certify 100%, or we're going to have to adjust down a lot of our tax base. So I've had to do some updating. And I've done a reasonably good job with that. Statistically, it looks very good. I have an acceptable ratio. I have an acceptable coefficient of dispersion. But in my heart of hearts, I know it's not nearly as good as it would be if we did another revaluation and we re-inspected all of the property in town. It's now been 19 years since our last revaluation. The town of Skowhegan, unfortunately, doesn't even have any building permits. And I am sure, if somebody builds a house, if somebody builds a garage, it's obvious, we pick all that stuff up. But there's no way we know if somebody's remodeled the kitchen or remodeled 3 rooms in the house. And then there's also the thing that when you observe certain things going on incrementally, even though I've been in Skowhegan for 20 years now, if I go by somebody's house and I see that there's a new roof on it, I'm going to say, well, that's just taking care of what they want. That's just routine maintenance. If I go by it and I see that they've painted it, I'm inclined to say the same thing. If I go by, I may not even notice that there's new replacement windows. I mean, It's just not, they don't incrementally, little by little, impress you that that house over 20 years has been transformed from an old house that was in less than average condition to an old house that's in better than average condition. So, depending on what you're doing and how you're doing it, I mean, I've done reasonably well. The statistics in Skowhegan look pretty good. But I know that there are people who own properties that have been improved that are undervalued simply because those improvements have not been picked up through a reinspection program or a total revaluation. I also know that some properties, and every once in a while, when it hits beyond the head, somebody calls up and say, hey, I really need you to take a look at this house. It's getting pretty rough, and I don't have the money to fix it up, and it's gone down over the last 20 years. And unless they called to ask me to inspect it, I wouldn't realize that it had gone downhill. And it would be valued too high because our record reflects the condition it was in 20 years ago. So I don't know exactly what you're planning and how you're going about it. I don't think you're planning a total reinspection program. You can do a lot, as I've done a lot in Skowhegan. But I don't know that there is no way that if you work with data that you already have in hand, that you're going to pick up some of the changes, positive changes in the value of certain properties and negative changes in the value of certain properties that have occurred that are not observable from the outside. I think I've given you a very honest, I can't give you a short answer.
No, actually,
I think I've given you a very honest answer.
No, you did. Thank you.
Any other questions for council? Any questions from the public?
Who sets up the valuation? I mean, you said, it's actually plugged in, but how do you put up like
I'm a little
square
hard
foot? The square footage of house, and then it's going to be valued this much, or you have, who decides this? Is it you? Is it you? I mean, who's going to set up the valuation of how much the houses are worth in the tax? Where does that come from? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this may require somebody else to step in and try to answer your question. My proposal to the town is limited. My proposal to the town is to set up a land valuation schedule that will reflect in the assessed values the values that are manifested from the marketplace, that you can look at sales and say, gee, in this area of town, generally a 2-acre lot sells for about $20,000 to $30,000 or $25,000 to $28,000. And we'll try to set the values that are reflective of that. Pat Dow is your assessor. And he will, and I'll try to help him do this because it's necessary to coordinate the land values and the building values so that they come in together where they should come in relationship to land and building sales. And the whole idea of the valuation is to develop appraisal schedules. And I've talked just about the land schedule a little bit ago. But the other appraisal schedules are building schedules where, in general, we estimate the replacement cost new of a home, taking into consideration the quality, size, story height of a home. And then we adjust that valuation for depreciation. And depreciation has three components. Many times, the three components aren't relevant. Sometimes they are. Many times, in a neighborhood that's a pretty good neighborhood and a house that's a reasonably livable quality house, the only thing you have to adjust for is physical wear and tear, physical depreciation of the property. That it's no longer new, it's got to be depreciated compared to a new house because it's old, has a little bit of wear and tear. Sometimes you have to make an adjustment for functional obsolescence, something that's internal to the property. I have a big old barn attached to my big old house. And even though I do a little farming, I raise some animals, and I sell land because everybody wants to take an order. I'll sell you some land. So I use the barn, but it's a great big old barn. You know, 100 years ago, everybody in my community farmed. It served a function. I'm about the only guy in the neighborhood that raises anything anymore. There's some functional obsolescence. Nobody is going to build that gigantic barn with a gigantic hay loft. And sometimes there's a locational obsolescence. It's called economic obsolescence or external obsolescence. You might have a neighborhood in town that's just not the most desirable neighborhood. Maybe it has a lot of truck traffic. Maybe it's just somewhat of a blighted area and houses don't sell for as much as they do in another neighborhood where the houses are better maintained, there's not as much traffic or as much noise. That kind of an external effect on value. And the assessor would try to take that into consideration. So that's the basic approach. And it's done the same way that I described relative to the land, where you measure how your assessed values stack up to sales ratio study, where you're looking at the level of value that you're at and how closely you are across the board to that average ratio.
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Another question? Doc?
You know, anybody, I'm always full of questions. The last town council meeting, the presentation that Mr. Dow gave, and then he left before questions were asked, it appeared that, and you keep talking about the Trio software and doing things on the computer and everything, and the feeling that I got, or from what I got from the presentation, is that I'm a realtor. I've been a realtor for many, many years. And you can't use a sale. The sales of your property is not divided by your land and your appraisers do, but you don't see it on the finished product. But anyway, you've got to drive through a neighborhood, through a town, and get a feeling of the different neighborhoods. You cannot do this sitting behind a desk in Skowhegan or wherever. You have to know the neighborhood because there'll be one neighborhood where the homes are valued at maybe $100,000 to $150,000, and there'll be another neighborhood that the homes are valued and selling for $250,000 to $300,000. Yes, even here in Lisbon. So you just cannot do it all behind a desk. You have to, and the feeling that I got from the previous presentation was that it was all going to be done off-site with a computer. Am I wrong?
I think you're wrong. I think think maybe things weren't explained as fully as maybe they could have been explained. I certainly agree with you that you gotta get out in the field, you gotta ride the town a little bit, a lot. You gotta know the neighborhoods.
Yeah, you've lived in one area for 20 years, and so you know the neighborhoods without even driving around now. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I certainly don't know the neighborhoods here without driving around.
Right.
And I would try to coordinate my time with Pat's, who I believe is probably becoming more and more familiar every day with the town, to have a reasonable neighborhood delineation so that the unit values that we use for land fit the neighborhood. And if there are some economic adjustments that need to be made for certain neighborhoods because they are illustrated by sales that indicate that maybe very few properties sell, and when they do sell, they sell for a low price. We would try to reflect that in the valuation of the town and the valuation of those neighborhoods.
I'm not quite understanding that when you're saying by the sales and adjusting it that way, because you're looking at, when you see a sales price, this comes through the registry of deeds, through the tax fund. That's a finished product, that's land and building, and of course an appraisal has been done, but you don't see that. So,
That is
you
land
know,
building.
take a piece of land and adjust it.
What
I can't
What
understand
I've
what you're trying to.
tried to, I'm sorry, we're both talking at the same
Yeah,
time. Go
I
ahead.
don't understand your approach.
Okay. What I've tried to indicate is that it's important that your staff and me work in concert, that I just don't develop land schedules and Pat develop building and depreciation schedules that don't work together. That's not the way I want to go. I'm sure that's not the way Pat wants to go. I've got a lot of experience doing revaluations. I have a lot of experience with the particular software that you have. I think I know the ins and outs probably as well as anybody knows them. But we've got to work together so that the package of not just land value or building value, but the total appraised value of a house that sells with a lot is in line with what the total sale of that house is. And we primarily do that by testing our appraised values, lumping land and building together for the land and building sales to the sales prices. We compare the total package, assessed value, to the total package sales price. And I've tried to emphasize that I can't just do the land without coordinating my effort and getting Pat and I on the same page that it all works together.
I have a question for the town council now, Ms. Boyd and town manager. Evidently, there were two bids that came in for a revaluation. I was a little disappointed that we only have one presentation tonight. I was hoping to have both presentations to see how each person was, or firm company was going to do an evaluation. And I was hoping to have a presentation for both of them. And nothing disrespectful, but I would like to have a presentation from the other company before you people make a decision. Is this possible?
Dr. House?
Thank you.
Mr. May?
Good evening, Richard May, Libby Street. I've known Mr. Van Dyne since the early 1990s. Known him professionally. Talked with him at conferences, conventions, and we've talked over the phone about different issues. And I've watched his work. He not only works in Skowhegan, but he works in a number of other communities. And he's done probably as many revaluations, total, partial, land only, buildings only, as any business, as any firm in the industry has done. The other proposals, my understanding is, they are much higher. I know that, and this isn't a negative, but one of the other parties has a full-time, very good position as assessor, and does this as something on the side. When businesses work in an economic situation such as this, to keep people at work, they tend to keep things as close as they can so they don't lose money. However, when you're working full-time, you can afford to lose something. So you're going to put in a full value in your proposal. When you go up 100, 120,000, which one of them is, you are getting up there where, I don't have it calculated out, but if you have 3,200 parcels in town, it's $100,000. A revaluation company would charge us, because we're paying for it, well over $100 per parcel. So when you think about the cost, you need to remember that when they're talking about something, they're talking about having a full value for themselves. They provide a good product, just as Mr. Van Dyne does. And at the same time, they are walking away with full salaries because of the work that they do. I've been involved in it for 26, 27 years, both on the local level, meaning as a selectman assessor, and I currently am employed by the city of Lewiston. So I see some of these questions. Mr. Van Dyne is doing it probably more as a favor to us than anything else. The product will be a good product. It'll be something better than we have now. I know of properties that are valued at 200% almost of what they should be valued at, and others that are valued at probably 10 or 20. You add them together, they might come out near 100. But again, it's skewed all over the place. So it needs to be taken a look at. They need to look at the values. He's taking a first step and saying, let's work at this one. Take a little chunk at a time, and let's do it, get it done with, and get on with our lives.
Sorry to make you sit back down, but
But
with, I mean, this being more of your professional alley as far as the assessment part and being involved as you are with the town, I mean, do you feel the direction we are of doing the evaluation in-house with this step is the right direction to go?
with the funds you have available, it's excellent.
Thank you.
If I could just make one or two more comments. I tried to propose in response to what I understood the town of Lisbon's need we need help putting together a land schedule that works for the town of Lisbon. And that's what I tried to respond to. I'm not saying it's not as good as if you hired me for $275,000 to do the evaluation and re-inspect every single property in the town. What I tried to do was just simply respond to what you asked for with what I thought was an appropriate solution to the problem that you wanted solved. And if I haven't anticipated some of the things that you wanted solved, I'm happy to go back to the drawing board. With what I understood, you want somebody to help figure out how to value the land in Lisbon in a way that's appropriate for Lisbon, reflects the market values in the town of Lisbon, or a uniform percentage of them, and coordinates well with the rest of the work that you're undertaking. That's what I tried to propose. That's what my proposal is. It's what I thought you asked for.
Just in general, I mean, I have no idea. What does a process like this take? A year, 2 years? Something to do this? 2 years? And when was the last time you guys were evaluating houses around here?
It was probably
100 years ago?
86.
Oh, wow, long time. Okay.
1988.
So we're due. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Oh, yes, Michelle? However, anybody can hear us.
I'm not trying to rehash this, I'm just a very numbers theological person, so. Knowing that the reassessment was done before my home was built, okay, I'm in a street that is a cul-de-sac, there's 10 homes on it, we were built within a year or so, I guess, of the last assessment being done. So I'm trying to understand, because my home has been, I have had it appraised 5 years ago. Since then, I've done interior and exterior work, all of which are pool permits for at the end of the day. Just so we're clear on that. But one of my questions and concerns would be around the fact, again, and I'm just using whole numbers because that's just for me from a theory standpoint is easier. Bought the home, the lot was appraised at, say, we'll say $30,000. The home, when it was built, was appraised at, we'll say $110,000. Okay, so that's $140,000 that we're talking about. 5 years ago, I had it appraised, and it appraised out at, we'll say $180,000. Okay, so here I am thinking about $50,000 since it was at least purchased, you know, we're talking about. I went through my home in the last 3 years, and I've spent probably 2/3 of that amount in upgrades, updates, some of which, as you were talking about, roof, windows, doors, all that, but we've added a garage, deck, things that get full permits for. Now, with the market the way it is, I know that my appraised value is no longer the appraised value. That was before the market even died, that this appraisal was done. So my concern is, and I'm one of the homeowners on my street who has maintained my home. There's a few other people that have, and some that are in process right now of doing that. But I also know in the last 5 years that there's been several homes sold that no upgrades, nothing was done. And I know of the last home that was sold 3 years ago was sold after the pipes burst. So it was sold to get rid of it at a very, very low amount. So my concern, first and foremost as a homeowner, is how that's going to affect my current value, because what you have to go off of in my surrounding neighborhood, and I understand you're only doing the land portion, but I need the big picture because the other part's going to low. So we all know where the market is right now. It's very low. We have homes in Lisbon selling for $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. I've heard of prices right now. If the lots are equal in size for a town lot, we're talking if it's an average, 100 by 100 lot, and if the home is selling for $80,000 and $30,000 of that is lot, I'm trying to understand then, being that, all of us look at home as an investment, some of us should be anticipating that we're going to be looking at a loss
that's where I'm sitting at, wondering, you know, as a homeowner, I understand that, you know, we want, and I understand how you explain it, you want to continue to talk more even, we want this to be more of a quality type thing, I get that. But for those of us that have done very well maintaining our homes, we have put a lot of sweat equity into our homes, not just, you know, money. Are we the ones that are going to be penalized the most because of the fact that we have put this into our home, we tried to maintain, we've done some additions, we've done little things to it, but then there's other areas in the neighborhood, and then you tie in the economy and the market. Fair market value now is different than it was 5 years ago. And I'm just trying to understand the numbers piece, because I haven't heard anything to really give you something to compare to. That's something you can.
Market is the great
Not my
market.
money. Right, but fair market value 5 years ago,
No,
that's
fair
different
market
right now.
value is 19 and 11, all 11.
Which is different than it was based on the market though. You can't tell me that the market
Almost.
has affected that, that's not here for public knowledge, so.
Almost anybody who does this type of work, and I probably even should say everybody that does this type of work, is going to put the overwhelming emphasis on the most recent sales, the most weight on the most recent sales. That's not to say that, you know, you may have some area of town, a road where there haven't been any recent sales. You got to go back a little longer just to get at least some historical perspective. But the overwhelming weight will be put on sales that are reflective of current market conditions. But there's an exception to that. And anybody that does this type of work doesn't set benchmarks, doesn't set guidelines based on the property where the pipes had burst and the bank had taken it over and they sold it in 2 days for a very low price. That type of distress foreclosure sale that's not going to be the benchmark. Or at least it's never been the benchmark in any project that I've ever worked on. Those are sales that are, unfortunately, in some areas right now, they're too common, but they're not the benchmark that you use to establish assessed values.
Okay, from town of Lisbon, and this came up last year, we had over, I believe it was 50 some odd foreclosures. Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, we had a very high number last year, and then this came up in this session. We had a lot of foreclosures. So there isn't a neighborhood out there, I don't think, that hasn't been affected. This particular home actually sat for almost a year on the market, so it wasn't a quick sale, it wasn't anything like that. It was an unfortunate circumstance, unfortunately. My concern is, and you're saying it's based off of current fair market value. Unfortunately, I don't think our town, based on current fair market value, based on the lot cost, my concern is I don't think it's going to change much from the way it was before because of the way the economy has kind of brought some of those prices down. The people that built into the newer development, the one in Lisbon that was newer, theirs probably are going to be a lot higher because at the time when it sold, a lot of those homes were being built during the time that the economy was booming. So, like I said, my concern is though, I understand you want to, we want to balance things out, but at the same time, there's those of us that have been putting a lot of sweat equity and things in our home, and I'm afraid that we're the ones that are going to be penalized because.
Pat may have a lot more perspective on this than I do. I'm a blank slate. I don't have opinions about values in Lisbon because I haven't worked in Lisbon. But every year, the state of Maine, through the Maine Revenue Services Bureau, does a study on their own. They get input from the local assessor of what the sales in the community are. And they systematically compare those sales prices to the assessed values of the town. And the reason they do that is to try to equalize the value among towns that are in the same school district, towns that are in the same county, so that they all pay into the school district, into the county on the same basis. And they all receive benefits from the state, for example, for educational subsidy or revenue sharing on the same basis. They can't accept each town's value at face value because they realize some of them are very out of date, some of them are right up to date. So in the analyses that the state's done, Pat, what's your average ratio?
56% quality rating and
56 in quality rating?
somewhere well in the 2 digits. They're all over the board. You men should be begging for a rebound.
Oh, no.
Michelle, may I just add, one of the things that just going in, and even before when I first got on the council, we were talking about reevaluation. There's a lot of numbers going around. I mean, it's 2 things that I know from listening, that the best time to do a reevaluation is when the economy is actually where it is right now, because you actually can get to 80, 90, 100% evaluation, possibly without raising anybody's taxes. It's possible, just because we go from, say, 56% evaluation to 100% doesn't mean any taxes go up. And the reason he's mentioned the idea of, when you're describing your road with your house being, say, on a high percentage of the more evaluation, doing the evaluation that you're doing will may actually, your house will benefit the most of everybody's house on the road, because your houses would actually balance downwards versus the other ones would balance towards the middle. So, and the only reason I say this is a few years back, I had to go from home town. I moved to the house that basically had everything the new one had. The new houses were, the taxes were about 5 times as much. And I feel my house was evaluated probably 100, 150%. With the revaluation, I think that number will come back down with it. So someone in the house that has a brand new house that's been evaluated at today's market or market 3 years ago, when they do the revaluation, it's going to try to balance everything off. So, everything you described to put on your road about you actually upkeeping and taking on proper permits and the other people not doing it, by this evaluation, most evaluations, it will probably it's not going to drop the value as far as the resale value of the house, but what it will do is bring the evaluation that you get taxed on down to the point where your taxes, most likely, you'll be the one on your road that benefits from the revaluation. Your taxes actually drop. So again, it seems really strange, but sometimes the more you do, if you have the nicest house in the neighborhood, and you've got permits, so your taxes within, gone up every time you get a permit, because they're reevaluating every square footage of the porch and the new windows you put in and the extra bathroom. When they do a reevaluation, odds are that's going to get all backed up to the point of being more equal with the houses around you. So it may sound strange, but if they take the house from, say, 60% evaluation to 100, it's very possible your taxes may drop in that process.
Right. It's not my taxes I'm worried about. It's understanding in theory if a lot was $30,000 when it was built, okay, and I had my home assessed or appraised, and now the assessment comes out because you're talking fair market value, and if the homes here have been selling for a lot less than we all, or at least I follow it in the surrounding towns, just so I have an idea of where my house sits from a price standpoint. Since the economy and the whole issue, prices have went down. As such, I would anticipate as part of that price going down is the lot cost, because that's associated into the cost of your home. So I'm trying to understand is, if my lot costs $30,000, 16, 20 years ago, and it comes back at a fair market value now based on what the surrounding areas are, and it's $25,000, how is that a benefit for me? And I'm not concerned about my taxes. I would pay $1,000 more a year now if this right here, what we were standing in, was a prime prestige facility. I have no issue with that because I have no problems with mortgage education. And I realize it's a high number. I just don't understand how, if it was, 30,000 then, and it would say come back 25,000 now, how does that help me if I'm looking at selling my home in 5 years?
But I don't, again, not
That's what I'm
saying,
trying to understand the numbers.
not that I know a lot about evaluation, but I think what you're going to find is one of the most consistent prices that stays level is land prices. And the building, the construction, what's on the property value changes a lot. But say 8 years ago, if you were going through Lisbon looking to buy a buildable lot, and you were driving to Lisbon today to buy a buildable lot, those prices haven't changed as much as the overall construction if you would buy a standing house. That's what I know about properties actually maintain their value level better than, so to speak, structures do. So I don't think you're gonna find, even if they compare to neighbors around you, that your initial land investment value has changed. If anything, it's probably gone up. Land usually doesn't go down in value, even go down in cost. But again, I'm sure that's why they use some different averages. I mean, again, there's a lot that goes into it. It's a process we have to go through, just because if we don't do the evaluation, the state can mandate come in and do it automatically, and then we really don't have control to do what we're doing. So, so hopefully the process that we have in place is the most reasonable one we can, but the fairest. One of the things about controlling ourselves is we can look and see when this is done and make sure that it is somewhat fair. And with the process and the people that we voted in earlier, if once evaluation goes through, like yourself, and you look at your numbers and really don't agree, there's going to be a mechanism in place for you to go and say, these are all my numbers, and this is what I think is fair, and this is what it isn't. And we will be, I will have the ability, but the group will have the ability to actually reflect that and change it either good or bad. So, again, I think the whole process is in place. It's just the idea of how we get there. And unfortunately, we've tried many times in the past to get there, doing it the big way, and unfortunately, that's not how it works.
Richard?
As I was just trying to understand the piece of it, because all that's been talked about, and I think everybody's just thinking numbers and the whole thing, so I just wanted to understand.
Thank you, Debbie.
And visit me in the office.
The,
I work very nice. I can't do that.
the one component of all this that no one has talked about, we've talked about 54%, 56%, or whatever it is, and a quality rating of 13 or 14 for improved parcels, which the state says we're at. The one component is the mill rate. And I'm hearing through what some of the questions are that have been asked is, well, they're thinking that we're going to have a mill rate of $25.50. Now, if you have the same budget, if you approve the same budget this year as you had last year, no increase in budget cost, and you had the same revenues, then the 56% could be increased to 100%, and your mill rate is going to be somewhere around $13 or $14 per thousand instead of $25 per thousand. Nobody's mentioned that. So I think it's important for you to understand that when you start equalizing values, that you need to remember that the mill rate is going to be adjusted. Now, one comment that comes in, and people are very nervous about this, that they're going to be penalized for doing improvements to their home. Well, one of the other ways to look at it is that there are people out here that are in this community that have been for 10 years or more, have been penalized, some to the point of paying twice as much in taxes as their neighbors or somebody else in the community. So we need to move ahead with it. We need to get on with it. I think that we delay the concerns, the fear, the literal fear, economic fear of people in the community will increase. Have to do it, get a baseline, and keep it up. And the council
Do the land evaluation, or are we gonna vote on a contract to evaluate our town? I think we've taken this in a whole different direction than what we originally started. From what I've picked up and what I've been able to understand is that we want to put down the groundwork so that Mr. Downey do an evaluation. And why are we trying to take this in directions other than what we have? You know, I'd like to see us bring this back to what the real issue is. We're voting on something tonight that would lay structure to do that, not an evaluation. And also, if we're going to do an evaluation, and we're going to talk evaluation, I think that we need to table this and bring this to a discussion amongst the councilors, that we can have open discussion and figure out where we want to go with this, if, you know, depending on what direction we want to go. And that's the only thing that I take out of this, is that we've gone a whole different direction than we originally stated, originally. While I got the microphone, I'm gonna pass it back. We have a gentleman that came in tonight that wanted to speak, but we were very much ahead of schedule, and he wasn't able to be here, thinking that the meeting was gonna start at 7. Mr. Upton would like to speak in the audience participation, never got the opportunity. I would appreciate it if he was given that opportunity.
Okay, Roger, you are correct. Yeah, I think we're all set. Thank you. Appreciate it. We are only voting on the setting the land valuation. We did get the presentation from Pat the last meeting on a step process to get us there, so we will have further discussion and go through things on the total valuation. I do think it is important, though, for the public that is here to be able to ask the questions and try to gain more of an understanding. I mean, this is a very big issue in any community, and the more things we can lay out up front and try to help people understand, I think it's good. I mean, I know it took us a little bit of time to get through this, but I think it's very beneficial. I think people got a good understanding. Hopefully the people that will watch this on Thursday will also get some good input out of it. So I'm assuming there's no more comment from the public on this. Yes, sir.
I'll try to make this brief. I know we're at the very beginning of talking about evaluation, and I'm sure the council is aware of what I would like to say, though, but I hear a lot of talk about what's going to be fair and what's going to work for the town of Lisbon, and I would like to remind the council that the town of Lisbon is not the municipal building that sits out on 196, nor the government entities that it houses. It's the people that own homes here and live here and own businesses here. And I would urge the council, as I'm sure you will, to keep that in the forefront of your mind as we go through this process.
Thank you, Richard. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we have an agreement in front of us for, I believe, the value was 8,000.
Would it be possible to allow this document to make it,
Does it relate to this, Roger?
no,
Well, I was going to let him have an opportunity after this. I was just going to finish this session and then let him speak. So I would entertain a motion. If council is up to that, or if council is not up to that, please tell me what you'd like to do. Roger.
I'd like to table this for further discussion. I think that as a council, we need to talk about this and decide where we're going. I don't think tonight is a prime opportunity to vote on something of this nature without further discussion.
So I guess I would ask, if that's council's preference, what else do you want to talk about? The last meeting, we discussed this and we had an overview and we were asked to bring in the individual and go over this and be able to ask that question. So I guess I would ask council, what is left unanswered that you don't feel comfortable with making a decision on tonight?
Well, tonight we want to bring in someone that's going to set down the groundwork to do a land evaluation for the town. Now, is this something that we're ready to go ahead with and vote on tonight? Or are we interested in looking at other people that may want to put a bid in on it? Are we looking, or are we just going to go with what we have?
Well, to refresh all of council's memory, we did put this out to bid. I believe we received 3 bid proposals. Two came back. Okay, one didn't bid for our health, 2 came back. The one that was brought before us was the one that was recommended by both Mr. Dow and the town manager based on knowledge, experience, and everything. So, I mean, I'm prepared, based on what I've heard tonight, the questions have been answered. I had some good questions from the public tonight. I think, as Mr. Maines has mentioned, we need to start making progress in this endeavor, and that we have the opportunity as we continue to go forward date, it's going to be well communicated. I mean, this is a topic when you start the adventure into adventure is probably not a great word, but into a reevaluation process. And it's very important that we keep communication open and keep people apprised of how things are going and what's going on, what type of progress is made, all that type of stuff. So I would expect that Pat and Steve will keep this in front of council and have information. We could probably put stuff on the website as we go forward and all of that stuff. But I mean, there's still going to be some very strategic points of decisions that council's going to have to make in this whole approach.
I'm not sure if you want me to take the mic or not, but I mean, one of the things I had no concern from the last presentation is just the idea of knowing how this actually all moves forward. And that was one of my concerns that was answered, is the idea of, just what you're saying, Roger, is the idea of if we start this, that during the process, can we actually check the value of how things are going and make sure it is beneficial to the town moving forward. Listen, tonight, I mean, I think he actually spoke very well. I appreciate everything you said, because you did clarify a lot of what my concerns were. I myself, I would feel free, I would like to make a motion that you move forward with the idea of taking the contract because of what we're actually investing to get this process going. And at least at that point in time, we can actually see if this type of evaluation process is going to work for us. And in the whole scheme of things, it's a very little investment to get things going, I do believe. So I would offer my motion that we do accept the proposal to start the grid work or schedule the time for the help of the land evaluation.
I'll second that motion.
So I have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion by council? Any additional comments from the public?
2 year, that's land, home, we're talking full package.
It typically takes 2 years. It depends on, I mean, in-house, it could potentially take a little bit longer. I don't know, it depends on how quickly we can react to everything based on the timing and stuff being set up, how available our resources are, and how efficiently and effectively the council makes decisions for going forward. Yes, sir.
I just have a question and one comment. If I'm correct, we as a town are being severely penalized for not initiating this process. At 50%, 6%, we're losing, as I understand, we're losing tree growth, and we're also losing homestead exemption.
Right, you're losing
To
56%,
everyone.
you're losing 56% of your homestead exemption, which is about 13,000 and change.
And we have to be above 70% to even get the full value there. So we need to get started.
Don?
Is it appropriate to know the amount of the bids? I know they were given out at the previous town council meeting, but one bid was very high and you completely threw that out. But the other, this gentleman plus the other one,
The current bid that we've got a motion on is a not to exceed of $8,000.
okay. And the other one you had been considering was how much?
I believe it was 35,000. I don't have that paperwork right in front of me.
Like I said, I was kind of hoping to hear from both of them tonight. I was a little disappointed.
Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed?
Order passed 5-1.
Okay, now we have a gentleman who didn't get a chance to talk here, Mr. Upland.
And Joe Chapman, 170 Ridge Road. Sorry, I understood that this would be the end of your meeting. I have 2 contaminated wells. The state inspected my wells. They on Route 9, where they were going to. And in June, they found the wells were contaminated. They came in August, re-inspected the wells, and agreed that both wells, both my houses up there are contaminated with salt and soil. At that time, Mr. Katz, who works for the DOT, indicated that he thought the state would drill new wells. And he says the state is not prepared to do this. They feel it is the town of Lisbon's problem. In January, I did have a discussion with Bill Bauer and the water department. They are considering running water from the intersection of Upland Road and Ridge Road, further up to where I am at the top of the hill there. But that's all. I talked to the town manager, and he's not aware of any plans, according to him, and felt it was a state problem. In January, here again, I said that Katz was from the DOT said it was a town problem. What I'd like, and the council to see if they can do for me, I'd like to know who's going to assume responsibility for my 2 polluted wells. And what's going to happen? Am I going to get town water, or am I going to get new wells? And when?
I can talk to that. The money has been approved by the town to fund the project. Whether the state and the town comes to an agreement on that particular project really doesn't matter, because the money from a town perspective is there. So the project is moving forward, and the state and I and our attorney will continue to argue the percentage. The state feels that we should pay 90% of the cost, and they should only pay 10% of the cost. The funding from this comes from the Recovery Act, and the project came in under budget, and not to overwhelm you with all that information. So this is an ongoing argument, but in lieu of that, the town's people voted to move forward and to appropriate the funding through the bond. Now, I have not spoken to Bill in reference to that, moving beyond there, and I did not realize that Mr. Katz had told you that they couldn't drill wells there. We were
He didn't say that they could. He said that the state now doesn't feel it probably to be a 90% business.
One way to us, well, by state law, we have to fix the wells. Either it's a state or the town. The money's there. Whoever comes to the end of deciding who's going to pay for it, it will be done. I mean, we have to fix it. We don't have a choice.
So that comes to my land. I have a house that I had to take off the well and put on a tub well, which is fine this winter, but it won't be through the summer. I don't know what I should.
We heard today that the project will be starting in July. So how much progress they make, it's a 2-year project. So I would expect that the water lines, from what I understand, will be done within the first year and a half. But that's something that Ryan Layton, our city engineer, is involved in overseeing that whole project. I sat in today and got some dates on that project from the engineer, and DOT was there. So
Mr. Layton, who I should talk to?
Mr. Layton and Jim Ferguson, who's a gentleman from the MDOT, who's overseeing that whole project. I can certainly give you his phone number tomorrow.
I know Jim.
Oh, you know Jim Ferguson?
Yeah.
Yeah, he is the person who's overseeing that Route 9 project.
What happened to the road and trailer?
I think Mr. Ferguson oversees that.
Okay. All right. Now, I'll call him.
One question though, where exactly do you live?
170, do you know what I'm
Yeah,
next two houses going up.
so that's above up.
Yes, that's the problem.
Oh, I mean, the project is going above.
It has to go above.
Third and fourth floor properties up above Upland Road on the left.
The question that's been asked is, it depends upon how the price comes in. The project has not, Upland Road has not been bid out yet. That's a MDOT project with the town. And we have to sit down, we are trying to get a schedule next week to sit down with K&K who was awarded the Route 9 project, they gave us a rough estimate of $35 per foot to install the material. We're going to purchase all the piping ourselves. They'll do the installation. We will sit down with them hopefully next week or the week after to firm up the cost of that with the engineer, Tim Swatell, and have a better idea. If we come in the price that we can extend it, I know Mr. Bauer has said he would like to extend it beyond Upland Road, and possibly, and I don't know where you live, but up that far.
34,000.
So, it's still an unknown.
There are other people that would be interested in time in the water there too.
Okay. Well, I know Mr. Bauer asked if the project came in over budget from what we expected, what we would do, and that he has to talk to the council, the water department will have to talk to the council on if that does come true. We don't know yet.
And I kept advised of the schedule.
Yes, I have your phone number on a piece of paper right next to my telephone. So as soon as I have more information, I will definitely have you or I have Ryan call you. Probably have Ryan get in touch with you. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think the distance is maybe about a third of a mile, or a little less than a half a mile. Is that right, George? Above Upland Road, about a third of a mile?
Yeah.
Probably uphill.
Uphill.
It's uphill.
I know I go up on the hill.
Yeah.
It's up to the reservoir you sold.
Feel your pain.
Okay, our next item.
Is adjournment, order 2010-30 to adjourn.
Motion from Councilman Tony, a second from Councilman Rochelle. All those in favor? Thank you all.